The Galactic Council chamber had been built to intimidate. It floated in orbit above the neutral world of Asterion, a massive ring-shaped structure of black alloy and transparent crystal. From the outside, it resembled a crown surrounding the planet. From the inside, it felt more like a courtroom where entire civilizations were judged. 12 of the most powerful species in the galaxy sat around the circular chamber. Each delegate towered above the central floor where the accused usually stood. And today, the accused was humanity. At the center of the chamber stood a single human figure, Ambassador Daniel Carter. He looked almost small beneath the towering platforms of the council representatives. Some delegates were 4 meters tall. Others were enormous masses of crystal or living metal. One species existed as a swarm contained inside a hovering field. Yet the human did not appear nervous. His hands rested calmly behind his back as he looked up at the assembled council. The chamber lights dimmed slightly as the proceedings began. A tall insectoid delegate from the Vrax Dominion leaned forward. Its long metallic limbs scraped softly against the platform as its translator activated. "Ambassador Carter," the mechanical voice clicked. "Your species has expanded rapidly across several contested sectors." Around the chamber, multiple alien representatives shifted in their seats. Humans were unusual, young, unpredictable, difficult to analyze. In barely 200 years of interstellar travel, humanity had spread across dozens of systems. Pirate fleets that entered human territory vanished mysteriously. Several ancient predator species had abruptly migrated away from human colonies. Even more disturbing, humans had never officially declared their military strength. The crystalline delegate of the Kalari Union spoke next, its body glowing softly as sound vibrations translated its voice. "For the safety of galactic stability, the Council requires transparency." The insectoid nodded slowly. "Humanity must declare its full military arsenal." The words echoed across the chamber. A low murmur spread among the observing delegates. This was not a request. It was a demand. Ambassador Carter blinked once. Then he tilted his head slightly, as if making sure he had heard correctly. "You want a list?" The Vrax representatives' antennae twitched. A complete declaration of all weapons systems. Carter was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "That seems fair." The response caught several delegates off guard. Most civilizations resisted this request for decades. The human had agreed in 3 seconds. Carter tapped a small datapad attached to his wrist. Just a moment. A large holographic document appeared in the center of the chamber. The title floated in glowing blue letters. Human Military Inventory. Public Declaration. The Council's translation systems immediately began scanning the file. The Vrax delegate leaned forward. Page 1 appeared. Weapons Classification Index. Page 2 appeared. Strategic Categories. Page 3 appeared. Energy Weapons Division. The insectoid paused. "This appears to be an index." Carter nodded politely. "Yes." The creature studied the document again. Its mandibles slowly opened. "How many pages does this list contain?" Carter glanced down at his datapad. "Approximately 600. For a moment, the entire council chamber froze. The Kalari delegate emitted a faint crackling sound. 600 pages? Carter shrugged lightly. "That's the simplified version." Silence spread across the chamber. Page after page continued appearing in the holographic display. Energy weapons. projectile systems, orbital defense arrays, autonomous fleet weapons, planetary siege platforms, experimental systems. By page 17, several council members leaned forward. By page 48, a few had begun whispering quietly to one another. By page 73, the VRAX delegate slowly looked back down at the document, then up at the human. Ambassador Carter. Carter gave a calm smile. Yes. The insectoid gestured slowly toward the glowing document. We were under the impression that humanity possessed a modest defensive arsenal. Carter looked at the document again, then back at the council. His smile widened slightly. Oh. He pointed casually toward the floating pages. You haven't even reached the naval section yet. The chamber no longer felt like a courtroom. It felt like a briefing room where a terrible mistake was slowly being discovered. The holographic document continued turning its pages in the center of the Galactic Council chamber, each one glowing softly as the translation systems processed the text for every species present. Page 74. Page 75. Page 76. The VRAX Dominion delegate leaned closer to the projection, its insectoid eyes scanning the data rapidly. Several smaller optical lenses extended from its head, zooming in on different sections of the document. Orbital kinetic strike platforms, it muttered. Another page appeared. Atmospheric denial missile systems. Another. Gravitational disruption mines. The insectoid froze. Across the chamber, the crystalline Kalari delegate emitted a faint harmonic vibration, its species equivalent of unease. These weapons, it said slowly. Some of these technologies were theorized but never constructed. Ambassador Daniel Carter stood calmly at the center of the room. Yes, he replied politely. The pages kept turning. Page 103. Page 104. Page 105. Now the council began noticing something unusual. Human weapons were categorized with extreme precision, not just by size, not just by power, but by specific battlefield conditions. Weapons designed for asteroid belts, weapons designed for dense nebular environments, weapons designed for combat near stars, weapons designed specifically to disable shield systems used by certain alien technologies. One council member from the Aquatic Tyrolean Federation raised a tentacle slowly. Ambassador Carter, the translator bubbled. Yes, your species appears to have designed weapons for nearly every possible type of combat. Carter nodded. That's correct. The Tyrolean delegate blinked its bioluminescent eyes. Why? The human thought for a moment. We kept running into new problems. Another page appeared. Page 147. Now the chamber had grown noticeably quieter. The weapons list was becoming alarming. Autonomous combat drone swarms, capable of dismantling capital ships. Solar flare amplification arrays. Asteroid propulsion cannons capable of redirecting planetary bodies. One of the elder council members, a towering reptilian strategist from the Corvus Empire, leaned forward. Its voice rumbled across the chamber. Ambassador, are these theoretical systems? Carter shook his head. No. A pause followed. The reptilian narrowed its eyes. These are operational? Most of them, Carter answered calmly. The pages continued turning. Page 201. Page 202. Page 203. By now, several council representatives had stopped pretending to remain calm. Quiet conversations were spreading across the chamber. One alien strategist whispered to another. How could a species this young build an arsenal this large? Another responded quietly. They didn't build it quickly. They built it continuously. Page 247 appeared. This section was labeled Planetary Defense Systems. Multiple council members leaned forward simultaneously. Planetary defense systems were rare and incredibly expensive. Most civilizations could afford one per homeworld. Humanity's list showed something different. Orbital defense grids, layered planetary shields, automated defensive fleets stationed throughout colonized systems. Then the page counter rolled forward. Page 300. The VRAX delegate's claws slowly tightened against the council platform. It stared at the title of the new section, Strategic Naval Systems. The insectoid slowly looked up from the document, then down again, then back up at the human ambassador standing calmly in the center of the chamber. Ambassador Carter. The human nodded politely. Yes. The VRAX delegate's voice came out slower now. Your species has declared more naval weapon systems in this document than the entire Dominion fleet possesses. Carter glanced briefly at the holographic list, then back at the council. He shrugged lightly. Well. He pointed at the next page as it began to load. You're just getting to the good part. The chamber had gone quiet. Not the formal silence of diplomacy, but the uneasy silence that spreads when a room full of powerful beings begins to realize they may have misunderstood something important. The holographic document continued to turn its pages in the center of the council chamber. Page 301. Page 302. Page 303. The section labeled Strategic Naval Systems had just begun. Ambassador Daniel Carter stood calmly beneath the floating projection, while the representatives of the galaxy studied the growing list with increasing discomfort. The VRAX Dominion delegate leaned closer to the hologram. Autonomous carrier fleets. Another page appeared. Planetary siege dreadnoughts. Another. Multi-vector railgun arrays designed for capital ship penetration. The insectoid slowly leaned back. Across the chamber, the reptilian strategist of the Corvus Empire let out a low rumbling sound. This document lists more warship weapon classes than the combined fleets of 3 major empires. Carter nodded politely. That sounds about right. The chamber stirred again. Page 322 appeared. The title of the next section caused several delegates to shift uncomfortably. Experimental Weapons Division. The Kalari Crystal delegate emitted a sharp crackle of light. Experimental. Carter glanced up at the document. Oh, those are the prototypes. The page expanded into dozens of subcategories. Gravitational distortion cannons. Localized time dilation mines. Stellar ignition torpedoes. Several council members suddenly began speaking at once. The Tyrolean aquatic delegate raised a tentacle. Ambassador Carter. The Corvus strategist interrupted. These are theoretical technologies. Carter shook his head again. No. The chamber fell silent once more. The reptilian delegate narrowed its eyes. These weapons exist? Some of them, Carter answered. Another page appeared. Page 349. This section was different. Instead of new weapons, it contained usage reports. The VRAX delegate scanned the data quickly. Then its eyes widened. Most of these systems have no recorded combat usage. The insectoid looked up slowly. Why? Carter clasped his hands behind his back again. Because we haven't needed them. The chamber absorbed that statement slowly. The Corvus strategist spoke again. If your species possesses this many weapons, its voice lowered slightly, why has the galaxy never seen them used? Carter tilted his head. Some of them have been used. The council waited. Carter pointed casually toward a smaller subsection of the document. Those systems. The Vrax delegate scanned the section. Anti-piracy, autonomous drone swarms. Deep space interdiction platforms. Rapid response orbital strike systems. The insectoid blinked. Those are defensive weapons. Carter nodded. Exactly. A long pause followed. The Kalari crystal delegate finally spoke. You are telling this council, its glowing body flickered softly, that the majority of this arsenal exists purely as a precaution? Carter smiled slightly. Yes. Another page appeared. Page 371. More weapons. More systems. More technologies the Council had never imagined building. The Tyrolean delegate whispered quietly. How long has humanity possessed capabilities like this? Carter considered the question. Then he answered honestly. A while. The Vrax delegate leaned forward again. Its voice had lost much of its earlier authority. Human ambassador. Carter nodded again. Yes. The insectoid stared at the glowing document, still scrolling slowly through its endless pages. Why would a species build this many weapons and never use them? Carter looked up at the council. For the first time since the meeting began, his smile faded slightly. We did use them once. The chamber froze. Several delegates leaned forward. When? The Corvus strategist demanded. Carter paused for a moment. Then he answered quietly. Before we met the rest of you. The chamber remained silent long after Ambassador Carter's words faded. Before we met the rest of you. The meaning of that statement settled over the council like a shadow. The holographic document still floated in the center of the chamber, its endless list of weapons slowly scrolling through page after page. But now the council members were no longer focused on the technology. They were thinking about history. The Corvus Empire strategist leaned forward again, its reptilian eyes narrowing. You are suggesting, it rumbled slowly, that this arsenal was not designed for the galaxy. Carter nodded once. That's correct. The Vrax Dominion delegate's claws tightened against the edge of the platform. Then who were these weapons designed for? Carter looked up at the towering representatives. For us. A ripple of confusion spread across the chamber. The Kalari crystal delegate emitted a soft burst of light. Explain. Carter took a small breath. Before humanity left our home system, we had thousands of years of conflict. The Council listened carefully now. Wars between nations. Wars over territory. Wars over ideology. Wars over resources. The holographic document continued to scroll beside him. Page 402. Page 403. Page 404. Each war pushed our technology further, Carter continued. We learned how to destroy cities. We learned how to destroy continents. We eventually learned how to destroy entire worlds. Several delegates visibly stiffened. The Tyrolean aquatic representative whispered softly. You built planetary weapons before achieving interstellar travel? Carter nodded. Yes. Another quiet ripple moved through the chamber. The Corvus strategist studied the human carefully. If your species possessed such destructive capabilities, How did you survive yourselves? Carter allowed a small smile to return. Eventually we realized something. The reptilian tilted its head. What? Carter gestured toward the massive holographic document. We were very good at building weapons. He paused. But terrible at surviving them. The chamber grew still again. So humanity changed its strategy, Carter continued. We built stronger safeguards, better defenses, more advanced deterrence systems. The Kilari delegate spoke again. You mean mutually assured destruction? Carter nodded. Exactly. Page 421 appeared on the document. The title of the section read, Strategic Deterrence Systems. Entire fleets designed not for war, but for preventing it. Orbital shields capable of protecting entire planets. Automated defense networks designed to neutralize incoming attacks before they could begin. Systems designed to make any war against humanity catastrophically expensive. The Vrax delegate spoke again, more cautiously now. So the purpose of this arsenal, Carter finished the sentence for it, is to make war a terrible idea. The insectoid stared at the list. 600 pages. Weapons beyond imagination. Technologies that could reshape entire star systems. Then the Vrax delegate asked the question that had been quietly forming in every mind in the chamber. If humanity possesses this level of power, its voice dropped slightly. Why have you never conquered the galaxy? Carter looked around the chamber at the gathered representatives. For a moment he said nothing. Then he answered simply, because that would be easy. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. Carter continued, building weapons is easy. Winning wars is easy. He looked slowly around the chamber. Living peacefully with your neighbors, his voice softened slightly, is much harder. No one in the council chamber spoke. The holographic document continued to scroll silently through the endless list of human weapons, and for the first time since the meeting began, the council began to understand what the list actually meant. The meeting ended without another demand. No threats were made. No negotiations were proposed. The council simply sat in silence as the final pages of the document finished loading. Page 598. Page 599. Page 600. At the bottom of the last page, a single line appeared. End of public declaration. The holographic display slowly faded. For several seconds, no one in the Galactic Council chamber spoke. Then the Vrax Dominion delegate finally broke the silence. Human ambassador. Carter looked up calmly. Yes. The insectoid's voice had changed. It was no longer sharp with authority. Now it sounded cautious. This document will be archived in the official records of the Galactic Council. Carter nodded. That was the idea. The Kalari crystal delegate glowed faintly as it processed the information. The Council will also broadcast this declaration across the galactic networks. Again, Carter nodded. That's fine. Several representatives shifted uneasily at how casually the human accepted the idea. The Corvus Empire strategist leaned forward. You are aware, it said slowly, that revealing such an arsenal may frighten other civilizations. Carter considered that for a moment. Then he gave a small shrug. They asked for the list. The chamber remained quiet. One by one, the council delegates activated their record seals. The declaration was officially archived, and moments later, the broadcast began. Across the galaxy, The same document appeared on countless networks and data systems. Human military inventory, public declaration. Strategists, admirals, scientists, and political leaders from hundreds of civilizations began reading. At first, many believed it was exaggerated. Surely a young species could not possess such an arsenal. But page after page confirmed the same thing. Humanity had built weapons for nearly every form of war imaginable, and many forms that no one else had considered. Yet one detail stood out to every military analyst who studied the document. Most of the weapons had no recorded usage. They existed. They were operational, but they had almost never been deployed. Years later, the document would become one of the most studied military records in galactic history. Cadets across dozens of star empires would analyze it in war academies. One such cadet sat in a quiet lecture hall of the Kalari Strategic Institute. He scrolled slowly through the final pages of the famous declaration. 600 pages of weapons. Technologies capable of ending civilizations. The young alien raised a limb. Instructor. The elderly strategist at the front of the hall looked up. Yes. The cadet hesitated before asking the question. If humans possess all of these weapons. He glanced down at the endless list again. Why does the galaxy still exist? The instructor remained quiet for a moment. Then he closed the document. The same reason humanity revealed the list in the first place. The cadet tilted his head. What reason is that? The instructor looked out the window toward the distant stars. Because humans prefer not to use them. The lecture hall remained silent. And somewhere, in a quiet archive server orbiting the Council world, the famous document waited patiently. 600 pages long. A complete list of humanity's weapons. Or at least, the ones they were willing to admit existed.